It's Song Talk Radio.
Welcome to Song Talk Radio. This is the show with songwriters talking to other songwriters about the craft of songwriting. We share tips, tools, and techniques, and together we all become better at writing songs. I'm your host, Neil Modi, and with me, my co-host, Phil Emery. How are you, Phil?
I am doing well from surprisingly sunny and warm St. John's.
Oh, very good. Yeah, you're out in the east where everyone else got hammered with a mass monster hurricane. And here in Toronto, it's been raining for like the last 2 days. So,
I know. It was sunny in 22.
Nice. Very good. All right. And please send your comments and questions or weather reports to Song Talk Radio on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, or feedback at songtalk.ca for the email, and we'll share your thoughts on the show. And please visit us at songtalk.ca to see the show post for this episode, to find links to things we mention, and to download lyric and chord sheets to follow along with the songs that we feature. And tonight, we're happy to have with us Angela Saini, the return of Angela Saini, Indian-Austrian Canadian country folk pop artist. Angela Saini is all about second chances and empowering others. She uplifts and inspires audiences with sing-alongs and storytelling about courage and finding joy in surprising places. BBC Radio has called the positive and upbeat songstress massively talented. Angela is most known for her sunshine-soaked song, Living on the Bright Side, and she's performed for festivals in Canada, such as Home County in London and the Philadelphia Folk Festival. Angela also has over 20 years of professional songwriting and performance experience, including 7 years as a formal songwriting instructor, coach, and mentor. She currently teaches songwriting at TREBAS Institute in Toronto, and she coaches new and established songwriters to help fine-tune their creations, ensuring the best possible message and musical expression. And tonight we're doing something a little different. Angela is going to be sharing some early sketches of some new songs that she's currently working on, and we're going to be discussing ways to develop your songs past the initial idea. So welcome back to Song Talk Radio, Angela Saini.
Hello. How are you guys doing?
We're doing pretty good. It's great to have you back on the show.
Nice to be back.
It's been a while.
Thanks
Definitely for listeners, check out Angela's earlier episodes. She's been on the show several times. So going back a few years. So definitely check out those episodes. They're really great stuff. Before we get into the meat of today's show, there's a couple of things. We had singer-songwriter Matt Zaddy on the podcast last week. Do you know Matt? Angela?
I love Matt. Yeah,
okay, so
great vibes, amazing musician. Yeah, I was happy to see him on the show. Yeah,
he's a super talented guy. And during that show, he mentioned somehow we got around to talking about cover songs, and he mentioned the band A Perfect Circle, who did a cover of John Lennon's Imagine song, and the discussion came about because A Perfect Circle had done a cover of this song, but they turned everything into like minor chords and minor melodies. And really twisted the song until, I don't want to say it's unrecognizable, but
I was going to say it's almost unrecognizable.
Almost unrecognizable. And it reminded me of something we had a discussion a number of years back on the show when Blair Packham was on the show about top lining and how he was saying, like, at least from a legal standpoint, the song is not the chord progression. The song is not the beat. The song is the melody and the lyrics. And Phil, you had pointed out at that point that, you know, often jazz covers, for example, they'll reharmonize the crap out of everything, right? They'll keep the melody and the lyric the same, but they'll reharmonize. And because I was trying to argue that I came up with a chord progression on the piano and then a singer sang a melody and lyric on top of it. So of course it's part of the song. But it raises these questions in my mind about how do you establish the identity of a song? Is it just the lyric and the melody? Is it everything around the lyric and melody altogether? I mean, it really gets into this kind of existential question for me about, you know, what's the identity of song, especially with cover songs. How far can you go before you no longer call it, you know, a cover song, or is it a reimagining of the song, or is it a reinterpretation of the song to the point, like you say, Angela, like it's almost unrecognizable. Yeah. But because it's such a popular
that's interesting
song.
What you say. Yeah, exactly. And that's interesting what you say about what Blair said about the chords not being, you know, technically songwriting. I'm not sure, and I know, and my students ask me this all the time. I think the jury is a little bit out on what is like a copyright, right? Like there is no set in stone rule. I would argue that I think Blair has a very good point that, I mean, it's obviously the lyric is first, right? Lyric is something copyrightable, if that's a word, and the melody. However, I think the chords, are very important to the song, as we can see by this example with the perfect circle, because when you change the chords to such a degree, and can you remind me, do you guys know, was the melody, because the melody didn't seem exactly the same. It went with the chords.
The rhythm of the melody is the same, but some of the intervals are different because they're minor melody, they're minor intervals.
Because it had to go with that new chord structure. Exactly. So
it's a little bit twisted, and probably the shape of the melody is similar enough where it goes up, it still goes up, but it might go up a minor third instead of a major third.
Yeah, it followed it fit with the chord structure.
Yeah, it would have to fit with the chords.
I argue that, I think, you can't copyright chord progressions. I mean, that's definitely true. I mean, there's like 12 notes in a scale, right? So you definitely can, and that's been thrown out in court anyway. But I have a lot of people who ask that question about like, is this ripped off or is this ripped off, or when do I need to like start, mailing? Did you guys ever do that back in the day? You mail the songs to yourself with the registered mail. And I used to do that all the time because I was so worried about people stealing my songs when I was younger. I mean, no one wants their song stolen, but it's just an interesting thing you brought up that I just wanted to jump on there. Like, I wonder, is that true? Because this A Perfect Circle cover brings up that exact point of when is the song still. But I mean, lyric, we can't deny. The lyric is, that is something copyrightable, as we know. Right,
and they didn't touch the lyric. They left the
and the rhythm, as you mentioned, now that I think about it, the actual phrasing of the lyrics were the same. But the melody, wow, that was wild. For those of you who are listening, if you haven't heard, did you play it on the last show? It was
we didn't play it. He mentioned it, and then I searched it, and I listened to it.
And thank you for sending it to me, because I think it's a great example of, like, where does songwriting start and where does it end? Right. Yeah. That's really the question of that. It's just amazing to me. But that version is it's powerful though. It's so, like almost if Imagine by John Lennon is, this sort of optimistic, even though it's a bit maybe somber sounding, optimistic kind of ideals. I think this version by A Perfect Circle is like almost dystopian. It's just like, it gives you the opposite feeling by the chords, the way that they really, it's almost like upsetting. Like, listen, and I actually really like it. I really like A Perfect Circle. Back in the day when I was a total rocker, I loved, Maynard, he's a singer in Tool, and I used to love Tool, there's rock band, and their songs are great, but I kind of, it made me like a little upset listening to the song. It really was a downer to me. And I was like, wow, like, what a different song.
Something I wanted to throw out to our listeners, and Angela, as you as well. Every now and then I get an ad for a songwriting contest that people want you to enter. And my idea of this is that these are just basically little sort of businesses that people have started because everybody, all these people submit their songs. They all pay like $25 or $50 to get it in, and they make some money, and there's nothing wrong with that. And then they have some people judging it. Something kind of like what we do. But I'd like to know if anyone's has entered any of these contests and what your experience was, and send those to feedback@songtalk.ca, and whether or not you think it was a worthwhile experience or just a scam. I don't know.
I'd be interested to hear what people think on that. Yeah.
You've never done that, Angela?
I certainly have. So I have entered some of those contests, and I will say, I'm treading carefully here a little bit, but I think that it's just like a lot of things in the music business, and songwriting is just one of those. I mean, you could look at, Canadian Idol, or you could look at all these contests, people competing. Right. Mm-hmm. Any kind of competition in the music business. And the one thing on that I can say, and I also mentor a lot of young people, and I was one of those too, where, everybody's just got this pie in the sky sort of, I want to be a star kind of mentality. And that's great. We need that in the world. That's how we are going to have the new generations, and that if that's compelling and that's what makes you go for your dreams, I'm all for that. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I do think there is a whole industry that sort of preys on that. I'm not saying that the songwriting competitions are that, but there is a lot of money that gets made on the business end, and that's fine. Where people, when you look at how much prize money gets put out compared to how much money it cost, how much they probably took in, it's pretty. And this is just coming from a business standpoint. It's like, wow, it's like ludicrous. It's like, wow, this is just a huge cash cow, because everybody's like, all I need is that one award. All I want is, because I can speak on this as an artist as well, and songwriters, we're constantly looking for validation. And that is one way to get it. You pay the fee, and and of course it is based on some merit. I'm not saying that it's, you just pay your way in. That's definitely not the case. On the flip side, I will say my whole career in many ways was launched, my solo artist career was launched in some ways because of an award. And I didn't even win the award. Actually, I was the runner-up for Best Female Artist for the Independent Music Awards. Now, this was in 2010, so this is going back some time. But I was playing in bands. I was in 2 different bands. I was doing my solo thing kind of on the side, not really taking it that seriously. And that award / running, I was a nominee. I was the finalist, so I did get an award. Right. I got like a little prize for that. It actually was a catalyst for me personally. It did help. It did launch me kind of like, started getting a few other accolades and this and that really got me taking my solo career seriously. It is a big part of how I, became Angela Saini. I mean, I've always been Angela Saini, but now I'm Angela Saini. So those kinds of things can really change your career. So I will say that on a personal front, it was something that did kind of catapult me leaning into, taking more of my solo stuff seriously, because people were really liking the songs I was writing. And my rock band, I'd been playing in for so many years, and we had a lot of, great triumphs as well, in my opinion, but nothing to that extent. And so it can be a game changer for a songwriter. However, I will say on the flip side, from a business standpoint, I've been very wary since then of really spending all that money, because when you look at, and I won't name them, but I know of the big major songwriting prize, awards. Most of them, when you look at the people who are winning them and what happens and what the cash prize, like it's not doing a lot. It's really just something great that looks good on your bio. So there's validity to it. Of course, these are great songs, and sometimes I go and check them out. I'm like, oh yeah, fantastic tune, like amazing. I'm glad they got recognition for that. The money part, I think, is what really gets me, because some of them, I've considered doing some of them again, and I look and I'm like, wait a second, the cash prize is, like $500. But they have all these, like, maybe they're just paying all the judges all these thousands of dollars they're raking in from all the, submission prices. Like, so that's just me being, maybe a bit wary from the business side of things. But good for them. I mean, they're obviously, some of them are really great, and they've really launched people's careers. So you can't poo-poo on them all, but I will say they've been good and they've been bad to me as well, because I've got runner-up things and other things, and it didn't amount to anything. So right.
And like you say, it really depends on the context of your current situation and where you're looking at in your career trajectory and
exactly
all those sorts of things.
What are you going to do with it? Like, exactly.
And how much is it going to mean to you?
Exactly. And I will say, and I shouldn't say, that they're not all great in some ways, because I did actually, a song on my last record did get, again, I didn't win, but I was a top 5 finalist for Best Alt Country in the International Music Awards. So to me, it was like that nice bit of that validation. But most importantly, what did I do with that? I just put it on your bio. And that's, for a songwriter, whether you're an artist or not, that's like, okay, it gives you some credibility, because that's really how the industry, that's how the industry works, unfortunately. But I just feel like from the money standpoint, you're like, wow, I talked to someone a few years ago about this, and they're like, oh yeah, I spent like $800 just on submission costs for like 2 or 3 of these from their new little catalog for that year. And I was like, wow, that's a whole song you could record with that money. It's when you think of like the cost of that.
Or you could pay a publicist to help you get on shows like Song Talk Radio or
for example.
or something like that. So I guess maybe it's with any of these things, and I'd love to hear from our listeners and what your experience has been. Is just to be realistic and realize that just entering into something you may not win, but actually even having a goal and finishing something off and doing the submission and going through all that, there's a certain value to that.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. But if you're not making any money off of your music and you're spending $800 a year on submissions, maybe just do one or two a year, possibly.
Yeah, I think there's definitely you got to weigh out the pros and the cons. So I'm not for or against all of these things. I just think you have to really weigh it out. Is it worth it? And what will I get from this?
Yeah.
Just like any decision you make in your career. So, yeah.
Well, anyway, congratulations on all your accolades.
Thank you. We've really dug in deep here on some of these topics. It's been great.
A couple of different directions there. Okay, let's get into the main reason you're here. We want to talk about a bunch of songs because you posted on Facebook a little while ago about I'm working on a bunch of songs and kind of contemplating what step 2 is for a bunch of these songs. And I know a lot of especially beginner songwriters, they hear stuff on Spotify, they hear stuff on the radio, and even if you're a veteran songwriter, you're always hearing the final version of a song. You're never hearing the iterations and the blood, sweat, and tears that went into bad first drafts and all the sort of stuff that's the messy part of songwriting, where you go through stuff and it's not that great, and you're always constantly trying to improve it. Because I know, Angela, from conversations we've had in the past, that you're and because you teach the stuff too, you're very much on the craft side of songwriting, and you employ tools and you know how to push the envelope in that sense of when you get stuck, what to do to push it forward and really make it happen, right?
It's not easy. And
No.
I will say, even for me, I have songs that I've just completely abandoned. And I feel guilty, like that mom who just was like, no, you're not my favorite. Just go over in the corner. I'm never going to look at you again. And it's
Mom.
Sometimes we just have to, and again, I obviously everything from my point of view is I'm an artist and songwriter. Some people who are songwriters and maybe aren't the singer of those songs, they might approach it a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. For me, and I think we've talked about this a little bit, Neil, and maybe in some of the other shows, is I'm very artist-centric in my songwriting approach. I've gone to Nashville and done the co-writing camp thing and all of that. And those are super fun and you learn a lot and they can be super valuable. However, from a artist standpoint, some of those songs I look back on and I'm like, there's just not enough Angela in these songs. They're just sort of let's crank it out. We've got 3 hours and we have to finish the song. And you kind of make compromises, or at least I saw them as compromises, because it's that's not what I would say, or that's not how I feel, and then kind of when the session's over and you're like, great, let's hand it to the publisher. The song's done. I'm kind of but it's not done, And so that's sort of how I approach songwriting, which is why maybe it's such a labor to get it just right. So by the point where it gets to, you might hear it in a public space, and I think all songwriters should do this, actually, where you've really gone through and I just talked about this today in my class. There's a term that in the studio, I've heard a lot of producers use, is cut the fat. And it's not the nicest term, but the term cut the fat really means is if you have a 4-minute song, does it have to be 4 minutes? Is there some parts we can cut down? But more importantly, I think from a songwriting perspective, not just the arrangement or the production, is the words themselves. Can we take out some of the syllables, or is there a better way to say this? Or was I really clear when I said this one line? So anytime before I'm about to record anything, I go through the songs with a fine-tooth comb. I really try to think what is there a better way to say this? Is this clear? I might get other people to listen to it. Can you tell me what you got from it? What do you think this song is about? Just to make sure that it's really clear, so that, because as we know as songwriters, it makes perfect sense in our head. Mm-hmm. We know what the song is about, but when you play it for someone else, do they know what the song is about? I mean, if we look at hit songs, it's usually undeniable. But our songs, it's important to kind of put the mirror back on it, going do you get the gist of what I was trying to say? That's really, really important. So that's not step 2, back to, what you were kind of talking about, Neil, but that's maybe step 5 or 10 or 20, depending on how the process goes, because every song is different.
And every song takes a different number of steps.
Exactly. They definitely do. Yeah. And it's so cool because you bring that up. The post on Facebook a month or 2 ago was I had started 3 songs in the same day. Like, we all have those moments, those days where we're just on fire. Like, I think one of them I was like walking, because I do a lot. Actually, this will come up in what we're talking about. I have a dog. So when I walk my dog, I have a lot of marinating time. So I'm either listening to my voice memos on my phone. Sometimes if I'm really into a song, I'll just listen to it back a bunch of times while I'm walking because I'm doing something else. I think the value in doing something like that, actually, someone that I'm mentoring right now, her songs, I told her, I said, before you want to record anything, listen to it in the shower, listen to it while you're doing dishes, listen to it while you're not focusing on the song, because that's how your listener is listening to it. Your listener is listening to it not with a lyric sheet, not with like going through with a fine-tuned comb. Your listener is listening to it maybe while they're driving to work or while they're... So for me, that's a really important step. And again, this isn't step 2, but sometimes it is step 2. For example, one of the songs that I had kind of started in that day we were just talking about recently was something that kind of just popped into my head while I was walking the dog. So I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. So I sing it into my phone, put it away, and then go back to it later. Now, the question, I guess, the theme of today is like, what do you do with it when you come back to it later?
Yeah.
Because inspiration, as hard as it is to believe, inspiration is the easy part. Like we're all creative people. We all have ideas that pop into our heads, and that's the inspiration. That's actually the easy part, in my opinion. I mean, not easy, but it's the part that comes the easiest. Let's say it that way.
Yeah, for sure.
So what do you do with it? So for me, when I have so many songs on the go, I find that's a real detriment personally. So with that post where I was like, I have these 3 new songs I started in one day, I was actually like all over the place. I didn't know which one to focus on. I would prefer to be inspired with one idea and then, develop it forward. So that was a little bit of a crazy thing.
So
but
for the most part, you like to take one song, run with it, finish it, and then get on to the next one? Is that
I'm definitely not finishing it necessarily. Okay. That's the one thing, and I hope that this will help maybe give some people in the audience a little sigh of relief, because it's completely normal to just not finish the song. Like I would love for people to just be like, oh, it's okay that I always die at the bridge, because for me, I'll always have the verse and the chorus, or like I'll continue till I have the 2 parts for sure. It's like I have a song now, like there's something here. For me, the bridge or this, whatever part it might be, the finishing part sometimes can take a while. It has to marinate in my brain. Again, I might listen to it. I might make a bunch of changes before I even get to the bridge. And like I said, some songs just get completely abandoned. But that's also, for me, it's just because I have quite a bit of a repertoire already on a published end. Like I just have a lot of songs I've released. So for me, I'm constantly, trying to gauge, like, is this as good as blank, blank, blank? Is this as good as, some of my other repertoire? And I don't necessarily suggest that everyone does this, but unfortunately, I only have so much time and resources to really follow through on a song. So if I don't think the chorus, because again, the chorus is the most important part of the song. If the chorus doesn't like totally hit or doesn't have that same oomph as some of my other tunes, I kind of go like, I'll put this aside. Maybe I'll come back to it later. And sometimes I never do. So again, not step 2.
Is that a call you can make yourself though?
That's a good question. I think for me, especially I haven't done a ton of co-writing since the pandemic, I'll be honest, like just a handful. So I'm generally writing alone now, at least lately. I think that's a good point where maybe sometimes I might give up on a song too early. I'm sure I have done that, to be honest. And luckily, I have it there. It's in my folder. I can go back to it. But I really, for me, I want to finish the songs that I'm really gung ho on, like I want to finish the songs that I'm excited about. And I go, oh yeah, this is like, whatever that je ne sais quoi is, that's got something. And those are the ones I finish first. And then I kind of have to prioritize that way. Yeah. But that's a great question, Phil. I mean, because you're right. Like, I'm sure there are songs that I have that maybe have some legs. I just haven't let them run yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like you say, from the point of inspiration, from the initial idea, and then by the time you get into the song and then start really editing at that point, I feel like you're more objective at that point. In the early stages, it's very subjective. So if you abandon a song early, it's probably just a gut feeling that this ain't working.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe it's also I didn't try hard enough. I mean, it's possible too.
But it is a sort of thing where if you hand it to another songwriter, they may see something in it that you didn't, and they could run with it and really make something special out of it. Potentially.
Yeah. That's a great point. I mean, it's like a pair of pants, right? I might have a pair of pants that I'm like, I don't really like these, and make my hips look wide or whatever it is. And it's like you give them to someone else, like, these are my favorite pants ever. I wear them every day, So it's kind of a weird analogy, but sort of the same kind of thing, right? Yeah.
It was a great idea for a song.
How many bands have, their big hit is a song they absolutely hate? Like Radiohead
I hear
hates
that.
Creep.
Yeah.
And they always hated it. They hated it in the studio. So sometimes just because you don't like it, it may still be a good song. You just don't like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely true. That's definitely true. I think it's important, like you were just saying, Neil, I think it is important to let it breathe at least a little bit. And like I'm looking at, because I knew today what the topic was, and I'm looking at all these unfinished songs. I have sheets and sheets and sheets on my desk here in front of me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and most, one of them I think is done. It's not at the point of real performance polish yet, but I think the song is done, and I have pretty much everything else that's half done, not even barely started, kind of verse chorus. Oh, this one's terrible. I have quite a, and that's the thing. How do you, and for me, I guess I just go in priority of which one makes me excited? Let's work on that one until it's finished, or until I can't work on it anymore, and then I'll go to something else.
Let's try and get a little more specific. And by specific, it's weird because I said this on the podcast a little while ago, that sometimes oftentimes you start a song and you have to listen to what the song wants next. So there's no hard and fast rule about what step 2 is. It depends on what step 1 was. I think
it depends on the song too.
It depends on the song. It depends completely on the song. Yeah. So why don't we take one example from you, Angela, maybe one that you've started and you got some inkling as to what the next step is going to be.
Yeah, this is fun. I'll start with something I would never normally do, but I think this is literally the only time I would ever share a voice memo, because it's not even good. I'll tell you right now. I listened to it before we started the podcast, and I was like, my voice is not there. But I think it's just a good example. And this isn't even necessarily it is a step 2 in some ways, but it just kind of gives the listeners an idea of how a song can change really quick too, from inception to even just, here's this is just the chorus. Because this song is I think it's a chorus, and that's literally all I have. This is one of the ones. But I thought it might be something, I don't know how often people play voice memos on the show, but this is very, very strange for me, but I think kind of exciting at the same time.
I think Blair might have, where he had notes or something. Yeah. So
I don't play piano well. I'm not really a piano player, but I had this little stint where I was kind of really getting into it. And for some reason I had this little chord progression, and I don't even know really what this is, but this is dated March 27th. So this is not new, but this was the beginning of where I'm at now. So I'm going to just find it really quick here, because we got talking, and there's a lot of stuff in my voice memos. So this started out, I will give you a little side note. Well, maybe I'll just play this first. Okay. Here we go.
Do you want to say what the idea of the song was? I
will, because that's what I was going to say. It's a deep topic, actually, but my best friend has been battling cancer since last October, and she was in the hospital for 9 months, and it's been wild. I did go visit her in Saskatoon, and she's out of the hospital now, and she's still fighting it out, and she's an amazing, amazing human. She's been my best friend since I was 6 years old. Wow. And I'm trying to think of what the lyrics are and what I'm going to play for you. But I wrote, so here's what happened. I wrote the lyric down as something for her.
So it's supposed to be a song to her or about her?
Yeah,
or?
It was something inspired. I think it was right when she got, oh no, she was still in the hospital. I just felt like writing something down as like, I'm going to write a song for her. Like it was just the intention was there.
Okay.
So I wrote the lyrics down and it was just that. No chords, it was just like something that rhymed that I felt at the time. It's like 6 lines. It's just it's just something I wrote down. And I'm going to play you something. And again, this isn't necessarily step 2, but this is just a fun way to see how, you can connect the dots, right? Like things, you can start somewhere and end up somewhere completely different, right? Yes. So this is going to be terrible, but I'm pretty sure this is the piano thing that I came up with.
Okay.
Keep on shining, don't lose hope. You are loved more than you know. Keep on dreaming. Terrible. Don't stop the fight. You are not broken, so keep on shining. Okay. So that was it. Okay, so that was different chords than what I have now, but the lyrics are there. That was the lyric. So first thing that happened was I wrote down the lyric as just like, that was the correct one, as something I wanted to, pen for her, just like as sort of a dedication. The piano part came out of me just messing around on the piano because I'm not a piano player. And it was something like, oh, this sounds good. And then I kind of just sang that on top.
Right.
So then I'm going to play another snippet because it starts changing really quick, probably because I'm not a piano player. So this, I think, is next. And again, I don't know how great this is, but this is kind of fun to play. Here we go.
Is this where you write the guitar then?
Yeah. You don't lose hope, not even guitar. Because you are loved more than you know. Just keep on dreaming. Don't stop the fight. You are not broken, so shine your light. Just keep on shining. You don't lose hope because you are loved more than you know. Just keep on dreaming. Don't stop the fight. You are not broken, so shine your light. Okay, so that was me singing in the air. Right. I don't even know, that's definitely not the key that I eventually put it into, but that I think was me. I don't have the exact date in front of me when that was, but that was something, obviously I was really interested in the lyric, really want to kind of work on this song. The sentiment is there, and I change it into something completely different and just sang it in the air. Because I think this, if I'm correct, I think I came up with this sort of idea, like, again, while I was walking the dog or something. Like it was something, and that's why I sang it in the air. There's no music.
Right.
And then the last one I will share is I luckily put the chords in the voice memo, so at least I know what the heck I'm playing. I just decided to put it in with the guitar, probably something I was just messing around with. Just keep on shining, you don't lose hope, because you are loved more than you know. Just keep on dreaming, don't stop the fight. You are not broken, so shine your light. And then I think, just the guitar. So this was probably something that I was just kind of messing around with. Some super simple chords. It's G, C, D, G. But then I put that melody to it. So now I'm onto something. Now, again, this is like over days and days and days of marinating and working on a million other songs. But this one is important to me. Obviously, I want to finish it, or it's not something I'm going to just easily, abandon or throw away. And that's as far as I've got. That's literally, but it just shows where it kind of went and then where it is now. So that's not step 2. I think I'm at step 3 or 4 now, but now it's like, okay, I'm really solid and set on that lyric. Yeah. I love the melody. I think the chord structure is great. It's, fits my music. It's kind of, upbeat, boppy, simple chords. I write pretty much, folk pop music. Now it's like, okay, well, what's the rest of it?
want to ask a question.
What are the...
I'd like to ask a practical question. These voice memos, do you slate them? Like sort of saying slate them, which is, it's a movie term about, you'd say, the date, this is what it is, and this is the chords or anything like that? Or do you just record the idea itself?
Great question. So when I'm working with other people, when I'm working with other people, I label everything because in case I have to email it to them or if they send it to their manager or something, it's kind of labeled and stamped with like the voice saying what's going on. When it's me, I don't do that on the audio, but I will say, like, for example, that was called Shine Your Light GCDG. So Shine Your Light, meaning that's probably going to be the title. These are the chords. And I have a whole bunch of other versions that say Shine Your Light something. I mean, maybe not this song, but what I would do, if you were to look at my voice, it's insane what's in my voice memos, but it would probably be, if I were to keep working, Shine Your Light V1, so version 1, or Shine Your Light verse, melody, idea, or Shine Your Light full song, Shine Your Light capo 2, or whatever. So I have the title in the actual ID, so I'll save it because I have to at least label it. Otherwise it's gone forever. I just have way too many things in there. So that's a great question. The reason probably why I don't think once in a while I do talk into it and say, okay, we're on capo 2. And sometimes, especially if I have like a kind of complicated guitar line, for example, where there's maybe some pull-offs or something where I might tab it out and, notate it, but I want to make sure I know how it goes, then sometimes at the beginning of the audio track, like on my voice memos, I'll say, G, pull off here and do it all slow so that when I go back to it, I'm like, oh, that's how I played it. So that is something I will do. Yeah, well, it depends on, like if it's something that I won't remember. And I do also use tab, or I have like my own weirdo notation that I use to kind of remember when it's not just chords, when there's actual like little lead lines or pull off things or certain ways that I play a chord. I'll notate that. One thing I think, another reason why I don't necessarily do it in the audio is because I just don't want to hear my voice so much. Just like, okay, it's, January 27th and we're on capo 4 and I'm playing this, I just kind of rather, it makes it easier to marinate and listen to the songs without having to hear that. So that's probably why, subconsciously, why I don't do it. Because I'm like, stop talking.
It almost sounds like, I mean, it's a question of what's step 2. I mean, you can label that however you like, but to me, it almost does sound like a step 2 in the sense of you hopped on the piano and you recognize that something isn't quite right with this. I need to look at this again, and that's when you just sang it in the air and you made a conscious decision. Maybe it wasn't conscious, but it sounds to me like it was a conscious decision that I want to just let the melody govern what this thing is going to be. And
in this song it was all about the melody. Yeah, that's right. The chords came after, which isn't always the case. I will say probably, and I know this is like, the age-old question, what comes first? And there is no answer, as we know, as songwriters, we know there's no answer. But I think for me, generally, music does come first. Okay. But once in a while, the melody will just pop in my head. I'm like, that goes in the voice memos right away. Very rarely is it lyrics first. I shouldn't say that. I have so many notebooks of lyrics that I just need to put them to something because they're I think, great lyrics. But I just like to noodle on I just like playing. I'm not a great guitar player by any means, but I really do like playing the guitar. So a lot of the times I'll just be, just fooling around on the guitar. And then that's when the songs come where I just start humming and go, oh, what about? And you just follow that fun little, rabbit hole. That's where the magic happens, right? You just kind of see what happens. So sorry, go ahead. I
was just going to say, so what do you think is next for this song when the next time you visit it?
I think the first thing I would do, and this is just sort of shows my process, I think now that I've got I have the theme, I have the idea, I have the chorus. That's the most important thing, and I like it. So now I'm like, okay, great. Like, that's I don't always start with the chorus, but when I have a good one, it's like, okay, let's continue. So what I'm looking at the chords. I'd probably think, okay, what are some other chords I can play that would sound like a verse? And I would start with the music first. And then I would go back and let the music dictate maybe what the melody is and then do the lyrics last in this situation. I could easily go back and do lyrics first, but the way that this is going, I just have this really strong one part. So I probably would go to the verses and go, okay, what would sound like a verse so that this sounds like a chorus?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the first thing I would do, music and then the lyric. Okay. Now, and another example, I have another song that's way more finished that I think has its own story, which could be helpful. Okay. Again, I like to just jam out on the guitar and just do whatever. So, for example, here's another tune. I think I was just playing just for the, just doing nothing. When you're just playing, if you play an instrument, you're just
noodling,
jamming around. And I was just playing, I think I've changed the key, but let's just say it was F, C, G. So something super simple, just like. Like that little pull-off thing and whatever it was just like a nothing. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'll just bank that. Like, it was just like, it was a nothing thing. And so this is kind of what happened with this song.
So when you bank it, you recorded it as a voice memo on your phone then?
This song, to be honest, because it's so simple, to be honest, I probably didn't. But okay. I do know that I had, because that's the chorus of this song that I'm talking about now. I probably just wrote down F, C, G. I have no idea. It's just so simple that I probably didn't record it, to be honest. But then I was actually playing my electric guitar, and I plugged it into my amp, and I was just fooling around with some effects because I haven't been playing live for so long. And then I started getting some shows this year and starting getting back into playing live. And I was kind of like, oh, I haven't played this pedal in a while. So I think I was playing around with the delay on the pedal and just, again, noodling just for the fun of playing with the pedal. And I came up with this little lick of, I'll just play it. And just repeat it. And it sounded cooler with the delay on the electric guitar. Obviously, I'm playing an acoustic. But I was like, oh, this is cool. This is like a fun little lick. And so I probably, and I haven't checked for the sake of the show, but I'm sure I recorded it and called it, pull off lick F, C, G, because it's the same chords. So what happened with this song, I have this little lick, and then I have this just simple strumming thing. And the chorus, these were kind of like two separate songs. So this is kind of fun, again, just to show the process a little bit. To be honest, I don't remember which one came first, but I definitely know I was playing this just for the fun of it, and I started like coming up with something. Just something simple that goes with the chords, right? So nothing over the top, but I kind of had this little section, and again, it's not super strong necessarily, but I had that kind of going in the background somewhere. But this little lick that I just played, the kind of got my attention. It's like, oh, this cool little riff. And then I started just playing just the simple, so I could sing over it easily, right? And then this is what came out first. And then I, keep going if I were to continue. Wait a second. This goes with. And then the melody actually continues, which I'll stop for a minute because I'll play that at the end. But I basically but put together these two ideas because they're actually the same chords. It's just F, C, G. But then I started working on the lyric, and this is what really tied it together. I'm sure all of us know at least one. We know lots of babies were born during the pandemic. We know lots of breakups happened during the pandemic and people getting together. But some friends of mine, unfortunately, split during the pandemic. And this kind of came out of like this storyline. And so the chorus is, like from, and again, this is coming from like just something, you know, you have, like we all do, we have conversations with people and we bank these ideas, or we know how they feel, or we, you know, we have, it's just by our relationships with others that we can kind of empathically like let that song just come out. So the chorus is, which again, I was like, okay, this is strong now. The melody from that little lick that I started with was the hook, is what got me into it. But again, if I don't have a good chorus, I don't have a good song. So this, at least in my opinion. So the chorus is, and then I started going farther and farther with like, where else can I go with my voice? Because it would be boring to do the same thing 4 times. So I just naturally, and I'll just play the whole thing so you can hear how the melody kind of changes. So this is the chorus. You don't know how to love me anymore. Living our lives between love's daughters. One day I don't want it to be too late. I want to stay. Is it too late? And then we go into that later.
Okay. Yeah, so it sounds like that was a very conscious thing to let it to have an evolution of that melody, like to have a change of the third line and kind of.
And that's just something I do naturally. Like I do love patterns, but like as I tell my students all the time, you gotta set the pattern, but you gotta break the pattern. Yeah. So very often, actually, not to let out my little secret, but if you look at a lot of my songs. Very often the third line is where the melody will start to go off, because that's where I'm like, well, what else can I do with my voice, or what else can I, you know, where else can we go with this? So I do generally like break the pattern. And then I decided, actually, this is a step 2 thing, maybe a step 4 thing. But I think I originally had just F, C, G through the whole chorus, which is, you know, simple. But somewhere along the way, I was like, no, something needs to change to kind of like, you know, give us, you know, like not a tag, difference. But just to change it. Right. And I went through a bunch of chords and, you know, like what would sound good. And then what I did play, I think it's a D minor, F, and then G. And of course the melody will, you know, follow that. So that's something that, again, that wasn't the original idea. The original idea is like, I just got these simple chords. Here's this melody. It goes really cool with the lick. Again, the lick is what got me, was this thing. I just liked it. Like, it was just fun to play, to be honest. I was like, well, this is, and again, with the delay, it would sound better.
Yeah, for sure.
But I just liked how it sounded, and then I just ran with it. And then I was like, oh, what about this? What about this? Oh, I should change the chords at the end. Oh, that's cool. That goes better going back into the F. And then the melody was natural. It was the sort of like getting the storyline, which was, again, kind of the last thing. For this one, not really, I shouldn't say it's the last thing, but it wasn't the first thing, because sometimes the song, as you guys know, we always have some songs that start with the lyric, right? But those are more rare.
For this one, you had the guitar lick and you had your la 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 melody. At that point, you didn't even know what the subject matter was, did you?
No, I didn't. Not for this one. And I had to, again, like to come up with a good melody. I couldn't play that, like, at least with my skills. If I was like this killer guitar player who can play licks and sing all over it, I mean, maybe I could have, but for me it was like, okay, now what? So I just went to the simple chords, and melody for me is actually quite easy. It's my favorite part, because there's just the options are endless, right? Yeah, I just love melody, because you could sing anything. I mean, I just love that part.
Do you put any conscious thought into, like, okay, so in that particular example, now you know that maybe the next step is to come up with the lyrical content, with the idea, at least, for the lyrical content, like if it's going to be about pandemic relationships and whatnot. Is there some sense of the music feels like X, so I want my lyric to feel like X, like as opposed to like I've done this years ago once, where I literally had a piano part that was pretty cool. I liked it, and I had a lyric that was kind of neat that I liked. That they were done very separately, and I just kind of jammed them together. And then when I brought it to our songwriters meetup, people were telling me there was a real disconnect, because the piano part was kind of upbeat and boppy, and the lyric was really, really dark. and there was a
I've had songs like that too. Yeah, I've had songs like that where What we're talking about is prosody, right? Like what Pat talk about.
You give that some consideration that the musical content is pointing a certain way. So I want to do my lyric pointing in the same direction, or even the opposite direction consciously.
Yeah, I think it, because, and it's funny that you say, because the way that you wrote that song, you kind of were mashing two ideas together. So it's more possible to have that lack of prosody, right? Because it was like, oh, well, I was thinking this when I wrote this, and I'm thinking this. And I have had songs like that too. I've definitely had songs where people are like, or even for me, I'm like, these don't work, but I'm trying to, push them together. I think naturally, because I think I just naturally, to answer your question, I don't think I put a ton of effort into it. Like, this sounds like this, so the lyrics should sound like this. I think I naturally try to. And if I do have, maybe like a kind of sad little lick or some chord progression is kind of minor or something, I think I naturally I'm like drawn to tell a sad story, So I think I do just subconsciously make them fit. Like, for example, Living on the Bright Side, again, which you meant, it's one of my most well-known songs. It's a really interesting song because, it's called Living on the Bright Side. The chorus is really happy, but the beginning of the song starts on these minor chords. So it's basically the relative minor. But it's a weird, people have told me before, they're like, when you hear the beginning of the song, they don't think they're going to hear this, boppy, happy anthem kind of sing-along song, but at the beginning, which either is good or a bad thing. I mean, I think it is what it is. But yeah, to answer your question, I think you just let the music decide. But I do think I naturally consider that because I think and I've done it too, where I have a sad song that actually sounds boppy, So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What a fun conversation.
Well, yeah, that was really fascinating. I think.
Yeah, I could talk to you guys for like 5 more hours about songwriting. This is so fun.
We totally could, but I think we're going to wrap it up there because that was some really great examples, and like I said, there's a lot more to say, obviously, but
I could go on and on. This was so fun, though. So fun.
We'll do the extended director's cut next week. So thank you so much, Angela, for sharing your process with us and for sharing your voice memos unheard anywhere else in the world. Yes,
that was first time. You heard it here first time ever. So thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah, and where can our listeners find more about you and your music?
Angela Saini. That's Angela SAINI.com. If you find me online, it's Angela Saini Music. Pretty much everywhere: Instagram, Twitter, Spotify, YouTube, all of those places.
Awesome. And we want to hear from you, our listeners. So please send your comments on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram to @SongTalkRadio, or send us an email, feedback@songtalk.ca. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel for live performance videos and full episodes. Subscribe today to the Song Talk Radio podcast on your favorite podcast provider. And don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter at songtalk.ca. You can find links to all the products, books, and web services we mentioned on the show on our resources page on the website. And wherever you are in the world, please join us online via Zoom at our next monthly Song Talk meetup. It's free to join on meetup.com and free to attend the meetup, bring a song and a lyric sheet, and get constructive feedback from other songwriters. Stop by songtalk.ca for the link. Actually, we had our September edition of the meetup last night, and we had some really great discussions about, there seemed to be a bit of a controversial moment between one member of the meetup insisting upon storytelling lyrics are very valuable, and other people were saying, no, you can have more abstract lyrics that aren't fully understood and that can be equally valuable. And that person actually messaged me today and said it was a good time at the meetup and it got very feisty.
Wow.
That's a good meetup then.
That's a good meetup. You can follow me at neilmodi.com. You can follow Phil
at philemery.ca.
And Angela, what's your favorite social media channel of all of those? Where do you go the most?
I'm getting really into Instagram these days. So Angela Saini Music is where you can find me on Instagram.
Perfect. Okay, thanks for listening, everybody. Be sure to stop by the website at songtalk.ca to browse past shows and find out how you can be a guest. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and keep on writing.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.